Though we all strive to be knowledgeable global citizens who learn from the past, we have to realize that we must take everything we are taught with a grain of salt, since, as we all know, history is written by the victors. Today, we will take a look back at the famous encounter between Cortez and Aztec civilization, and instead of just showing you what is written in history books, this short documentary will take you mainly through the perspectives of natives and offer a more realistic portrayal of what went down almost 500 years ago in Aztec Mexico. I'm your host, Anthony Gadzi, and this is the season finale of Behind History. In order to get a better look at what the Aztecs saw of Cortez, we will be using our time machine to go back to after the raid of Tenochtitlan and interview a young boy named Guatemoc, who was a scribe apprentice and one of the few Aztecs who managed to escape Tenochtitlan during the siege of the city. He also shared the story of what happened to the world through Aztec glyphs. We will be starring some guests who played key roles in the outcome of this event, such as Cortez, and we will go back in time to question Emperor Montezuma and his brother, Cuitlahuac, who took over from him as emperor after his death. Although this is a documentary focusing on the perspective of the natives, we first have to discuss some of the factual parts of the encounter with Cortez in order to confirm some information so we can set the stage for what will happen next. Everyone, welcome. Cortez. Cortez, we've brought you here to talk about your conquering of the Aztecs and to ask you a bit about what led you to that moment. Could you start out by giving us a bit of background information on your mission to conquer the Aztecs and what got you to that position in the first place?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. The feature's so amazing, it's almost mythical. And it's also pretty amazing that we all speak and understand modern English instead of Spanish and Nahuatl. To start out, I arrived in the New World in 1504 in Santo Domingo, the capital of Hispaniola, which is now known as the Dominican Republic. I sailed there in order to help my then friend Diego Velasquez with the colonization of the local people, which was very successful. My main goals were to secure personal wealth, fame, and power for myself, and I mostly achieved all of that. It wasn't until 1519 that I broadened my horizons and set out to scout all the riches that Mexico had to offer.
Scout is far from what happened. You killed an estimated 250,000 Aztecs. Well, I planned to just go in and scout the territory for possible trade or future colonization. But then the situation got dire, and I had to leave Santo Domingo quickly and add community, since an argument with the then Governor Velasquez led to him revoking my request to travel to Mexico. I was upset with him, so I decided to completely ignore him and just sail on with the crew I gathered. And as I say, the rest is history.
Yes.
We went on to conquer many different Native American societies, the most notable being the Tlaxcalan, who played a key role in the defeat of the Aztecs by aiding our effort with thousands of warriors. We finished with the Aztecs by 1521, and the nation that we left was heavily influenced, in our opinion, by our cultures and values. Finally, what did the Spaniards bring to Aztecs in your values, culture, and technology? We brought our crops such as wheat, barley, and citrus, and sugarcane from Africa. We also brought our religion, Christianity, which we tried to teach them, and our language, Spanish, which some of them learned. Among the values we had at the time that we shared with them were valuing ownership of land, the worth of gold, neither of which they had since they didn't have any idea of ownership, and they had so much gold and silver that was not really precious to them. Our greed outmatched theirs hundreds-fold at the time we met them. And among the technology we taught them to use were our muskets, our compasses, our horses, our armor, and our weapons. Thank you, Cortez, for your time on the show. Okay, now we're going back to year 1519, when Emperor Montezuma and his successor, his brother, Cuitlahuac, were both still alive, and the Spanish had just launched their first attack on the Aztecs, known as the Massacre of Tlaxcalan. We cannot tell them that they will die, or else that will mess up the timeline. Everyone please welcome Montezuma and Cuitlahuac in that order. I know you both disagreed on how to deal with Cortez,
and it was sad to see that you guys had to be attacked in order for you to stop being kind and offering your hospitality to him. I would first like to ask you both what you plan to do after the attack, and if the state of your nation's military power, trading presence, and size would have been enough to stop Cortez earlier on from his men causing the massacre of toxic cattle with proper planning. After that, one of you can focus on explaining how the Spanish were changing your society and through which methods they did that. Well, we are revered by the Incas and other civilizations, and we engage in trade and tax systems with many neighboring communities, similar to how Cortez told me he colonized an island in the ocean to the east. Our military is suited to control and dominate all of the Americas with our superior bows, clubs, and shields, and the hard obsidian that we use to craft parts of our shields and arrows with. We have thousands upon thousands of warriors, and we control many other groups that have been sworn into allegiance with us. The main reason Cortez's men bested many of our men was because it was a festival where everyone was celebrating, and in our world, we have enough honor that no person from this part of the world, the New World, would ever think of committing such a brutal act with such trickery and lies. They may say that it was a misunderstanding, and they would never normally do that, but we even have guards or citizens with weapons in the area. The one area where the Europeans bested us is in their armored weapons. They have suits of metal, and massive metal also. You cannot see any part of their skin except for their hands and parts of their face. They have these hand machines where you pull a switch, and a metal ball is fired out. We are scared of them because we think that it is very loud, and they may be able to create thunder. This makes many of our men cautious, but we all know never to be fearful, and when we fight to the end. That is our advantage. Since you know the power and bravery of your people, my brother, why do you not strike when I told you to? I was always wary of these strangers, trying to make their comrades think that we thought Cortez was Quetzalcoatl, which we just laughed at, betraying us at the aforementioned massacre, and trying to brainwash our people with their foreign values and beliefs. They tried to teach our people and children that their ways through the servants that they received from other native tribes, and their ways included their language, their Christianity, and even trying to get our people to agree with their cause and betray their own government. They even surrounded my brother with their troops in their fortress, which made him scared to command an attack against them in fear of his own life. Okay, thank you, Montezuma. Thank you, Queetlahawk, and I wish you both the best in oncoming future. Coming up after the short commercial break, we will go back to the aftermath of this attack and learn how the common Aztec people, like Guadeloupe, viewed this entire incident and how it changed their society. Okay, everyone, let's give Guadeloupe a big round of applause and pay attention, since he's about to share with you exactly how many of the natives felt about Cortez and the Spaniards, their impact on civilization, and what the Aztecs were like before this encounter with them. Also, remember to stay tuned for our live conference with the fans on November 15th at Livingston High School. The floor is yours, Guadeloupe. Thank you for having me, Anthony. The capital of the Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan, was a very wealthy city when it came to things like gold and silver, and we had nearly infinite resources. We were once a massive city at around 300,000 people, which was one of the largest cities in the world at the time, according to what Cortez and Europeans have told us. Tenochtitlan lies on a rich and fertile riverbank that aided the growth of our crops, which was how we were able to produce food for all of the inhabitants of our city. We created technology to help us maximize on the planting, harvesting, and watering of our crops, from irrigation systems to river draining, to even islands in the middle of fertile river water bodies to grow our crops. We have a complex religion that worships multiple gods who range widely in power,
and they all have a different job in society. We hold a high value over our Aztec calendar, which has many important worships and sacrifice days. We were once ruled by our great Emperor Montezuma, who we saw as a god in his own right, and we followed a strict code that included sacrifices and loyalty, and disobeying the government would have led to death. The native culture blended with the European culture by the locals starting to eat their food, and some of us mixing in Christianity with our local religion. The Spanish also greatly reduced the power of government by stopping several sacrifices and making some of us think that Montezuma wasn't a god, since he was bested by a group of strange-looking foreigners. They started teaching their language to some of our members, and it soon became adopted to part of our culture. And as you told me before the show, their language became the official language of the nation that we turned into, Mexico. However, we still value the corn that we used to grow in the future, and we eat that every day. Today in Tenochtitlan, I was very disappointed when we started to lose our cultural and religious identity. And when you told me what the future was like. But then again, I enjoy the new crops that the Spaniards brought to our land. In the end, though, all of the natives in Tenochtitlan would agree, though, that we would have continued to prosper if the Spanish had not come and destroyed our society, our culture, and our dominance, and molded it into something brand new. Okay, that's all, folks, and we hope you enjoyed the last season of Behind History.